Now, what I wanted to do tonight, apart from the other things we're doing, is, as I mentioned, we're living now with this COVID-19, the coronavirus, and of course it occupies just about every moment of our time. We get the odd distraction, but meanwhile, back on planet Earth, there's still the real world. And I wonder where you are with real estate. Maybe you've had an investment property, wondering if it might have taken a hit. Maybe you've had shares in the market and you've wanted to bail out and buy property. I don't know. You might be a tenant, not sure what might happen next in your rental situation. Real estate is a confusing for many area right now. Things are hazy. And of course, we've got packages so-called from governments to protect tenants. What does all that mean? And what does that mean for prices? I thought I'd catch up with a mate of mine, Peter O'Malley. He's a realtor at Harris Partners. He's written a detailed story about all of this, and I thought we'd get him on the line for a chat. G'day, Peter.
Good evening, Luke. How are you?
Well, mate, what about you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Happy Easter to you and your listeners.
Thank you, and to you, mate. What's it like being a real estate agency or having one right now? Is it as tough as we would imagine it would be?
Yeah, look, anecdotally speaking to agents around Sydney, about 20% of most agencies' rent rolls are experiencing a lot of tenant distress. Now, tenant distress is clearly tenants that have lost their job, they're locked into a lease, and they can no longer pay the full rental amount. The government has only said to estate agents at this stage that you can't evict a tenant in the next 6 months. They haven't put any further guidelines around that, Luke. So agents are having to negotiate between landlords who themselves are under financial pressure because of COVID-19 and in many cases tenants that are unfortunately unemployed.
That's a tough one, isn't it? Because if at the end of the day the landlord is relying on this as his or her or their only source of income and the tenant hasn't got income but yet can't evict, wow, that's a tough one. Has that happened yet?
Oh, indeed it is. Now, it's really important that tenants realise that no eviction doesn't mean no payment or no obligation to pay. So I think if you are in a circumstance where you have unfortunately lost your job and you can no longer pay the rent, you should be looking to negotiate a resolution between the agent and the landlord or looking to move on of your own volition so that you don't get a financial penalty accruing against you. Now, everything's subject to change, Luke, if the government come up with some further regulations here, but they've left it very open at the moment. And you're seeing estate agents in the marketplace that can't handle this circumstance. And at its extreme, you see estate agents inadvertently giving financial advice, telling tenants to dip into their super to pay rent. And that's a side effect of an industry that's not been given proper guidelines at a time of crisis.
Yeah. Are there people looking for rental properties now? Will it be the case that plenty of people had to move out of their rental accommodation? Are there potential tenants in the marketplace now?
Yeah, look, there are tenants in the marketplace, but vacancies are skyrocketing, Luke. So as unemployment goes down, vacancy in the rental market has gone up by the same degree. Interestingly, the sales market, whilst it's not booming anymore and it's certainly not rising, it is faring a lot better than the rental market. The rental market, quite clearly, is in obvious distress and immediate distress.
So the share market's been certainly down big and has made some recovery. What about the property market from the point of view of sales? You started to tell me there. So what's happened to prices in perhaps parts of Sydney and even Brisbane?
I'm putting it at about 5 to 10% pullback thus far. What we're not seeing, interestingly, Luke, is we're not seeing panic selling in the market on the whole. There's some people that have deemed that the COVID overhang or the effect of COVID in the next 12 months will probably be negative for the property market overall, and they're electing to sell out now. But we are not seeing distress selling, where we are seeing distress, as I say, with the vacancies and tenants looking to pile out. So it surprised me how resilient the sales market has been to date. Now, I'm not sure that it'll continue to hold at these levels going forward, but if you're asking the question, how is it today, it's surprisingly good. we've sold a couple of properties this month that have been competitive, hyper competitive, with multiple buyers trying to buy the one property. And with some price softening in place in the sales market, Luke, we must also remember that interest rates were cut twice in March.
Yes.
So owner-occupiers in the property market have got that perfect scenario at the moment of falling prices and falling interest rates. Yeah. And if you see the right property at the right price, why not?
Well, mate, it's hard to imagine interest rates going any lower. So, I was wondering if if you had the means, I wonder if there's not a better time to buy than right now. So the next question would be stock levels. Is there plenty out there or not so much?
Look, that's a great question, Luke. We have not seen a skyrocketing in stock levels so far in the sales market. We've seen a lot of vendors that have got confidence in their property and confidence in the market overall, and they've said to us, Peter, we don't blame you or we don't blame your team for what's going on at the moment. We can see we're not going to get the price we want now, and we're going to withdraw and come back in 2021. So there's not financial distress that's forcing vendors to go to the gallows, so to speak, Luke. I think the sooner we can get the economy kick-started, the better from that perspective, not taking any health risks in doing so. But if we can kickstart the economy shortly, I think vendors can come out of this largely unscathed.
Yeah, it almost sounds like if they do something like that, we'll have at least got to this point by dealing with the virus well, and perhaps the potential economic outcomes won't be as bad as they might be. So the obvious question then to someone like you is, do you expect we'll come out of this and people will go hard and we'll get back to near where we were, or at least it'll be very positive, or do you think we'll come out of this somewhat wounded and people will be, rather slow in returning to where they once were?
I think it'll be a slow recovery for the sales market. I think the second half of 2020, we will see the impact of COVID really show up in the sales market, where it's been an immediate impact in the rental market. You lose your job on Monday, you force that issue onto your rental agent and your landlord on Tuesday by saying, guys, I've lost my job, I can't pay the rent anymore. Yeah. We are seeing people with good, solid jobs in the community, thankfully. The government has managed to keep the majority of the population employed. And the key to the property market from here, Luke, is jobs. If we can keep people in work and getting paid, the recovery will be quicker and the downturn won't be as deep. Yeah,
fair enough. And what about interest from overseas? Are there still overseas buyers? You and I spoke about this a few years ago when it was running rife. I suspect very different these days. Is that right?
Luke, at the start of the year before COVID, we noticed a noticeable increase from Hong Kong buyers. And we knew they were Hong Kong buyers because they had a Hong Kong email address, or they just flat out said, I'm flying down from Hong Kong for the weekend and I want to look at all of your stock that suits us. And that was a really interesting trend that was emerging at the start of the year, and you would suspect that was as a result of the protests in Hong Kong. The overseas inquiries that I expect to get from here, Luke, are from expats that are looking at the softening Australian dollar. The Australian dollar during March got down to 55 cents one day, which is, if you're earning the pound, the US dollar, that's tremendous exchange rate, particularly in a property market that's come off its boom time levels. So any overseas buyers will be expats, I think, returning home.
Yeah, great stuff. Peter, always good to chat, mate. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you. Peter O'Malley from Harris Partners in Sydney.